20-second delay. All right, hitting the big blue button. And we are live. Welcome everyone to QuaranCon continuing education, not education.
Start if you mean to go on.
You ever done like summer school and it's like, you know, continuing education program? Yeah, apparently. Okay. Yes. So official, so formal. This is why QuaranCon, you know, my uniform is a hoodie. I feel like it sets the tone, right? This is
yeah, I'm wearing shorts. That's
yeah,
it.
Exactly.
You know,
no one.
It's warm.
I'm wearing pajama bottoms. No one will
there you
ever
go.
know.
See?
Actually, I wish I were. I need a QuaranCon tank top because it's actually quite warm, and I don't really want to be wearing a hoodie right now. But it's the uniform. So here we go. I'm here today with Stephen Aryan, and who is a fabulous author that hopefully you all know and have read a bunch of his books. He's got a lot of them, and we are talking about The Coward specifically today, which I am about 42% of the way through.
Okay.
I keep having to take care of a child. It's like she can't take care of herself.
Honestly.
And it really interrupts
demanding.
my reading schedule. I know. Oh. What the heck? She's 4.5, right? Shouldn't she be able to do all the things already?
Wash a car, drive herself to work at this point. Come on.
Yeah. Get a job, kid. Come on.
Needy.
So anyway, so I'm not as far along as I was hoping to be because I'm really, really enjoying it. And what I want to do is just sit down and binge it. And I was able to do that like the first night. I just stayed up really late and read for a few hours. And since then I've just been able to like get in dribs and drabs. But I'm loving it. I'm for many reasons, which we will talk about as we move on. But everyone who's here, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And please, if you have any questions at any point, just pop them into the live chat. There is a 20-second delay. Oh, there's the double sound. Yeah, pop them into the live chat. I'll be checking it periodically and we will ask Stephen all your questions. But in the meantime, I have lots of questions to ask. Okay. So we're going to start with those. So
is the first one about He-Man?
It should be. That should be the main question. Yeah, let's get down to what everyone wants to know about. Yeah. What are you most excited for about the new He-Man remake?
It looks awesome. Have you seen the trailer?
I saw it. Yeah. Well, I saw it. I actually found it from your feed. You posted it and I was like, holy shit, no way. And Kevin Smith.
Yeah, you kind of think, I don't know. And then you look at it and you go, yeah, all right. This guy loved it as a kid. He soaked it in and he understands the version of, and he's just made it something really special, interesting. I thought,
could be.
All right, you have my attention. I am interested.
Right, I'm willing to check it out. I remember when the trailers for the Shira remake first dropped, and I was super skeptical at first. Not that I was a huge Shira fan originally, because I don't know, I just wasn't. Like I had older brothers, and I watched a lot of G.I. Joe and He-Man and Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. But I watched some Shira. And I was just sort of like, really, do we need another Shira? And then, yes, we did, because the new Shira is amazing. At least to me, like it's brilliant. It does sort of all the things that I wish Shira had done originally, but also still respects the original, I think. But anyway, so hopefully
this is why people have tuned in. This is what
we're just here to talk about Shira and He-Man, and we're just gonna, that's it. We're gonna fan out for a bit. We're just gonna, So like, is there any part of that trailer that stands out to you where like that is the thing that grabs my attention?
I don't know. It's just that thing of whenever they remake something, my first instinct is to roll my eyes, because I always think you walk into any bookshop and there are thousands of ideas that they could do. And it's not as if they're short of content. And it's not like, oh, we can't think of anything. If only someone had written. Like, come on, there's thousands of ideas. They're starting to get there on some things, because we keep seeing fancy books being optioned, quite a lot of them. And then they announce things. Yeah. So, remakes, most of the time, I don't have the patience of the time. There are exceptions to the rule. Like the new Battlestar Galactica was amazing.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. But most of the time I just kind of go, no, boring, done it, not interested. But this, I don't know, it just has the right tone. From what I've seen from the trailer, it has the right kind of heart. Yeah. And he said you can watch it with your kids and you'll get stuff from it, and the kids will get a lot from it as well. So it's one of these things where I don't think they'll have nod and winks to the adults, but the jokes will be in there the kids won't really get. And then 20 years later, they'll be like, oh, I get it now. Oh, I see. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Shira is like that. Like there's just, I watch it with my daughter and she loves
Mm.
it. And she's a bit young for it, but we watch it anyway. And and this, but the thing is about kids being too young, right? Like just she doesn't get the stuff she doesn't get. So
Yeah.
the only thing I worry about is I try to sort of mitigate the violence. But I think Shira also, the new Shira does that too. It's sort of a lot of people are trying not to fight, you know, on the side of good. They're like, no, couldn't we just talk? And then when that doesn't work, things fall apart and they fight again. But and then it's, you know, robots mostly that are taking the brunt of the violence. So which is, you know, always anyway, whatever. I still worry that I'm showing it to her too soon. But then I think about the stuff that I watched at her age and I'm like, wow, I was definitely watching G.I. Joes and everybody was getting blown up. And then surviving, of course, like so many parachutes, right? Like, oh, that. I don't know if you ever watched G.I. Joe. Like,
it's like the A-Team, you know. You just everyone gets blown up and shot, and then they crawl out the car. Every episode, I'd be like, really? Okay. Even as a kid, I'd just be there going,
everybody's got like steel skin. Is it?
All right, you know. But I read Stephen King when I was way too young, and so you kind of, you know, you get some things and other things you don't quite get it, and you just you adapt, you know.
Yeah. I think mostly it'll be all right. I hope. Jeez. Always worry. Like, how am I ruining the kid today? I don't know. We'll find out.
20 years.
20 years, exactly. 20 years from now.
My mom, everyone, Shira. It scarred me for life. Really?
Yeah.
That's your grievance?
I mean, honestly, I gotta say, if that's the worst I do.
That's the worst she comes up with. I'm like, good job, Mom. You know. Wow.
Yeah. All right. So, okay, we've talked a little bit about. I guess we can move on to some of these other questions. I hear you wrote a book or something, but so in the list of like sort of more serious questions, if we actually want to talk about writing for a while, and then we will absolutely go back to talking about ridiculous stuff because I really personally enjoy that. I hope you enjoy it too. I just feel like as authors, we get asked the same questions a lot, and sometimes it's nice to just talk about yourself as a human being instead of like, oh, how, you know, where do you get your ideas?
Well, this is part of my comic book collection, so I can talk very comfortably about awesome comics.
Excellent. So. You just pull them out and show them to us. But so we'll get into that for sure. But let's be a little bit serious. Let's remind everyone that, you know, you're a very, very serious author, TM.
My Joe Abercrombie photo.
Yeah.
Does that one of his photos?
Do you have an axe? Could you pull a John Gwynne for us? Is that?
I've got a sword I made in the garage.
Excellent. That you made? Okay, wait. Hold on. Blacksmithing, what? Come on.
So after 6 books about writing about blacksmiths and many other stories over the years, I thought I've got to the age where I said to my brother, he said, what do you want for your birthday? I said, I don't want a thing. I want to go and do something. And he was like, right. And I said, like, you know, do this or go axe throwing, which I've done, nice. or like go and be a blacksmith for a day. And we thought about it and he went away and he found a course. And so me and him, in the middle of July, on one of the hottest days of the year, in a large metal shed, made a sword each.
That's awesome.
Next to a fire. I mean, you can't make a sword in a day. Really, you can't actually do it. We cheated and cut corners and used lots of modern technology and created something that if you hit someone with, would more than likely fall apart. But to look at and hang up, it looks like a sword. And it's very nice. Clean. But I gained a lot of respect and I learned a lot more about actually being a blacksmith than I thought I knew from reading around. But doing it was very different.
Yeah.
But that was fun. Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
So I made a sword.
Very, very cool.
It's good.
I have a friend who's a farrier, like one of my good buddies from high school. And I just watching her work sometimes, I'm like, holy crap. This is such an intense job. And that's just horseshoes. I mean, I say just, but like, you know, horseshoes.
Yeah.
But like, you know, and she's very, you know, expert. It's not just horseshoes because she's like fitting them perfectly to all these like high performance horses and stuff. It's a whole thing. But you know, then I think about making a sword. I'm like, man, and I should ask her sometime if she's ever done any swordsmithing or anything, like just for funsies, you know, like I don't know if that's too close. And she's like, no, my job is making horseshoes, and so I'm not going to make a sword for fun. But she's also definitely the type of person who would make a sword for fun. So I should really
It was good. It was good. It was very, very tiring. It was very, very hot.
Yeah.
A lot of precision work.
Yeah.
And but
I
I really
December
enjoyed it.
would be more of a fun month to do blacksmithing.
We drank so much water that day. So much water. I just went home with a headache and just lay down in the dark room.
Yeah.
For a couple of hours. Yeah, that was good.
Well, that's cool.
It was great.
Neat.
Yeah. It's nice.
So
day.
any future Smiths in your stories will have even more realism to them.
I apologized to all of them at the start of the day, and I apologized to all the blacksmiths at the end of the day, and said, going forward, I will do better. And they said, okay. They said, that's all right. And I'm like, good, okay. Okay. So yeah, but it was kind of like, oh, okay, this is the reality of doing it,
Yeah.
You read as much as you can, you do your research on any subject, and if you haven't actually got direct experience of it, you sometimes can get it wrong. But it's only the expert who sat there going, most people just wouldn't know. They just kind of go, oh, okay, that's how you do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
The blacksmiths read my books, be like, this guy.
Totally.
This guy.
Yeah. It's always, that's anytime you're an expert in anything, right? That's the way you read about it. And then you're like, oh, come on, author. Didn't you do the research? And of course it's like, yes, I did. I spent hours, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah.
I recently read a book that involved a lot of rope work and climbing and stuff. And just, it just wasn't quite accurate in the way it represented those things. And I was tempted to write the author an email. It's someone I know even, so I could, but I was also just like, you know what, who needs,
Dear author, an angry fan, I've not got this correct. You've not done your,
no.
I've become one of those people.
No, exactly. And that's the thing, right? So I would never write an angry email about that. But I was like, oh, maybe I should just offer some tips. And I was like, no, I don't want to be that person. I'm just going to shut up. If approached, I will offer services, and then otherwise, I'm just not going to.
Yeah, it's always helpful when you get comments like an email from someone saying you've misspelt a word here in your book. Well, thanks. Now that it's been printed, I'm sure I can go in and every copy, put an extra cob out on all the shelves. There we are. Page 22. Page 22. Page 22. It's like, it's a little late. The next printing, sure, thanks, but okay.
It's true. And it's funny because, with trad books, that really is a problem. If I get an email that says that, I'm like, okay, sweet, I'll go fix it. And then
great,
from now on.
Done. Next print, done. Great.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like, if that's got a spelling mistake, I won't worry about it until they say, right, we're doing a next print. And I go, right. Okay, I got an email from someone. There's a spelling on this mistake. Oh, okay. All right.
Let me know when they're doing the next print. I caught a couple typos. Sorry. It's proofreaders. So the thing is, I know that when I catch those, I'm like, freaking proofreaders. I don't blame the author. I'm like, the author did the best that they could, but why wasn't this proof better?
It's so bad though. It's even worse. Not just spelling mistakes. Like when I get stuff back from my editors the first time and they say, this bit doesn't make sense here. It just kind of leaps about. And I'm like, what are you talking about? A, B, C. And I look at it and I'm like, oh, I took out B at some point. I forgot to put it back in. In my brain, it's still on the page. Yeah. But it's actually not in the book that I've sent to them. So that's why it doesn't make any sense. Because you look at it so many times and you go over it and you change it and back and forth, and then it goes to my editor, then I redo it, and then I probably maybe do it again, and then it goes to copy editor, and then it goes to the proofreader. By the time it gets to the proofreader, I'm so bored of reading it. I'm just like, I have to change the font, I have to print it out, I have to do something to make me look at the words and actually read what's there, not what I think should be there. Right. Because it's just you, and then people go, oh, well, how did you miss it? I've read this 72 times. Exactly. I can quote it verbatim for about a week and then it drifts away. But,
no, and it's so true. And it can be the smallest things and it can be huge things. I did, so actually for my latest release, I did a whole, I read the whole thing out loud to myself because I found that works really nicely. Just right at the end, after full edit, after 2 rounds of proofreading, then I read it out loud to myself. And still, last night I got an email from a reader, hey, you got this character's name wrong twice on the same page. And it's one of the main characters. And I accidentally, it's one of the other main characters' names. It's just a weird, I must have been writing late at night, But how did it get through that many edits? My editor missed it. 2 proofreaders missed it. And then I missed it reading it aloud. Crap.
It's frustrating. You spend so much time pouring so many hours into a project. Yeah, it's like, crud. So anyway, fixed that last night, and but I still have to upload the revised version. So it's like, how many more people are going to read that? The next person,
Yeah. Anyway,
We'll find
so,
something
but yeah,
usually.
I like my heart goes out to trad authors, especially when you can't fix it, right? Like you get that and you're like,
Yeah.
maybe in a year or 6 months or however long it takes to sell out of this run. But
I mean, a couple of times my the person who did the audiobooks on my previous books contacted me and he said, I found something. And they tend to do the audiobook a bit ahead. And I've gone, oh,
yeah.
brilliant. And because he's reading it out loud, he has to for his job. And I've gone, and then I've told the publisher and they went, oh, right, wow, okay. And they've gone in and fixed something.
Totally.
But you know, that for me to read the whole book aloud, it's I read sections and especially dialogue to make it so it sounds real. But the whole book, that's
it's super time consuming. It took me a few days and it was very intense. And I clearly missed things, right? And I bet you anything that the section that I missed this thing on was because it was already like 2 a.m. and I was just like powering through, you know?
Yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was like, okay, jumped out of it, yeah, and you just missed the chunk, and that's where the two names were, and you're like,
maybe I just read them and my brain replaced them anyway because it's 2 a.m. and it's like, I don't know, I'm half asleep. Who are these people? I don't even.
Yeah.
Anyway,
true.
Point being, that's a rough go. Okay, now on to the serious question. We got very sidetracked by swords and then proofreading.
Yeah.
But we're coming back. We're gonna bring it around. So you've published quite a few books. You've got two
Number
full
7.
series. Yeah, and this is your 7th book. So you got two trilogies out so far.
Yep.
And are those both with Tor?
Orbit.
Orbit, sorry. Yeah.
Yep.
Those should not be interchangeable, but for some reason my brain always just swaps them. So those are out with Orbit. And then this is with Angry Robot.
Yes.
This new series. And this is a duology, correct?
It is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I picked that up from one of I was like stalking your YouTube last night. So awesome. And but so you must have a fair few readers who will follow you from books to books. And so what can readers who are familiar with your other work expect to find that is new and different about The Coward? Like what is the reason to be like, hey, come check out this thing that's unlike my other things in this way? And then we'll do the reverse of that after.
Yeah. So I'd done 6 books set in the same world where magic was a very obvious and apparent and in your face kind of thing, because they always say write the kind of book you want to read. And before I wrote my first book, I was reading a lot of fantasy that almost seemed embarrassed to be fantasy. It didn't have anything fantastic in until about 200 pages in, and then suddenly, dragon, and you're like, wait, what? So I was like, I don't want that. I'm not embarrassed to be reading fantasy. You still get a lot of that now with adult versions in supermarkets of certain fantasy books so that they can sell them so people can pick them up and not be seen to be embarrassed to be reading them. And the kind of person who insists on calling comics graphic novels. So there's that same kind of embarrassment level. So I was like, I'm not doing that. So my first 6 books are full of wizards and overt magic and non-human races and all that kind of weird shit that I love, and really over the top fantasy. Why wouldn't you? It's fantasy. Why wouldn't you have any of that? But after 6 books of wizards, I'm like, I'm kind of tired with the wizards for now. I need a bit of a break. So there is some oddness, and there's some supernatural, and there's some weird stuff in the new book. And there is a non-human race as well, but it's a very different kind of book. And it's all of my books tend to be about something under the surface. There's the obvious. As my friend said, there's the story, and then there's what it's about. And most books have that. Not every book has to be, making you question your life choices. Not every film has to do that. Sometimes I sit down and watch films that just blow stuff up.
Yeah.
I do a podcast about action movies. I just love it. Because sometimes you're like, I just want to watch Arnie kill 127 people in the film. I mean, it's great. It's fun. I enjoy it. It's very relaxing on an evening. Commando, and you sit the ticker, 1, 2, 3. That's what you want. But sometimes I want to read a book that challenges me, or there is something more to it. And all of mine have something. They're not preachy, because I don't like books that are preachy. I throw them across the room and they go to the charity shop and someone else can enjoy it. So mine, subtle. Mine are there to tell a good story. And if that's all you get from it, great. But there's more stuff going on. There's more nuance, and there's more things beneath the surface, especially with this book. So this time it's a book about stories. It's a book about fame. It's a book about heroes and heroism, the nature of being a hero, how we perceive heroes, both within our world and, you know, within this fantasy world, and what it means to be a brave person, because it's a really difficult question to answer. So I've had a crack at it, let's say.
always a tough one, and so far I'm really enjoying where you're going with it. Of course, I'm only slightly less than halfway through the book, so I expect it to take a turn at some point, but also not any particular turn. I'm just along for the ride, and I'm just really enjoying the characters and the setup. So what then? What is more of the same? So for the readers who are like, yes, but I want the thing that is Stephen. What is that? What?
People say that I seem to do really good like action scenes and fight scenes and battles and that kind of stuff. So there's plenty of that in there. There's lots of weird and creepy and disturbing monsters in there that might give people nightmares. Someone recently said, can my 10-year-old read this? And I was like, absolutely not. No way. No way. No, you have to be at least 17 bordering on 18, I think, to read this. So there's things in there that will terrify some people, I think, especially younger readers. So you get a lot of that. You get I spend a lot of time with my characters. I really work on my characters a lot and try to make them distinct and interesting and layered. And there again, I hint at things. There's other things going on. I don't completely explain everything on characters because you never know everybody all the time. You never see every facet of their life. And in this, there's just one particular story that these people are brought together for. And you find out a little about them, but you get glimpses of other things. So an interesting world, good characters and good battles, I would say.
Nice. I'm really looking forward to I think it's like coming around the bend. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to give spoilers, so I don't even want to talk about where I am in the book, but I have already encountered some cool people, some people who are different than they appear at the start. That I've really enjoyed. I like when we're done with the actual interview, I just want to like squee a bit about this one character. No, I don't want to ask you questions. I just want to like rave about this one character that I'm loving so much. But I don't want to say anything because because talking about that character would be a spoiler. So not gonna do it. But I do have some questions that I think we can safely talk about that are about the book later on. But okay, great. So I think that solidly tells readers who are familiar with your work already what they can expect that is new and what they can expect that is more of the essence of Stephen.
Essence on every page.
It sounded way better in my head. Okay. We can do spritzing books with it. Yeah. Okay. So the next question I have, if we're just going in order, because why not?
Sure.
The title of the book is The Coward, and which I think is excellent. And personally, like that is not a deterrent to me because I see that and I'm like, okay, great. But why would you write a book titled The Coward? Obviously, that's there's going to be some layers to that. That's obviously going to be interesting. But did anyone ever go like, well, I don't know, maybe is this going to be a hard sell? Or some people are going to see that the title's The Coward and be like, I don't want to read that. Who wants to read about a coward? Like maybe not thinking about it for the half second it would take to understand that there's probably an interesting story there.
There's a couple of things that originally it was called The Coward's Heart, and the second one. So originally it was a trilogy. It was going to be called The Coward's Heart. I can't tell you what the second one was called, and the third one was going to be called The Coward's Legacy. And originally I conceived this as a trilogy, and I think I spoke about this in another interview. It was going to explore the three archetypal phases of a man's life because that I was trying to construct, because there isn't the same phrasing that you'd have for a woman if you go and look at myths and legend prone. So there isn't one. And I was thinking, okay, so how could I explore it? How could I tell a story of a man at three different phases of his life exploring different things? And in talking it through with my agent, she said, it sounds interesting, but the time jumps between the books and the person's life, you probably wonder, well, what do you do in between? And so we kind of went back to the drawing board on the original idea, and I kind of retuned it and came back to it, and we made it a 2-book series. So The Coward's Heart became just The Coward because they felt it was a more striking title. It would make people kind of, as you say, go, well, why would you have a book about a coward? And make straight, it's that question straight away. Make someone reach for it on the shelf. You know, like if someone says this book is awful, you'd be like, well, why would you put that on the, why would you? It's that, you know, there are thousands of books published every year. You need something, some hook. The cover has to be awesome. And this one is amazing. I was so happy with it. But you need something in the title to kind of punch people in the face. And this will make people kind of go, what? And that's what we wanted. And then the biggest question is the main character a coward at all? Is the title even about him? Is it about other people? Is it about all of us? Chin scratchy. See?
Good questions. Good questions that we will not answer here.
No, and the book may answer it, may not answer it. You have to read and find out.
Yeah.
It's exploring the themes of this. So
as one would hope. Well, good. I hope that works. Probably the people who would look at that and go, I don't want to read about a coward, are not probably going to get as much as they should out of the book anyway. So
no.
So it's actually, I'm sure, doing you a favor in terms of only the people who are ready for that nuance will be interested in picking it up anyway, which is great.
I think so.
Awesome. So, okay, the next question I have on here was one that I asked you before we even started, and it was really for my personal curiosity. So if you don't want to talk about it, it's about your day job. Do you want to tell us about your day job at all, or would you rather skip it?
It's really boring. What I do, I kind of keep it quite separate. We said before that, so I have a full-time job. Most authors do. There's only I think that's another misconception a lot of people have about authors, even traditionally published authors. There are a handful of fantasy authors that I know of, and I mean a handful that write full-time. The rest of us have full or part-time jobs. I have a full-time job in marketing. I did a degree in business studies and computers. Really sounded interesting at the time. 20 years on, I'm like, it pays the bills and it allows me free time to write my books. So
sweet.
That's as much as I want to say about that, really.
Perfect. Do you find though, here's a question though, because marketing is always relevant to an author, I think.
Yes.
So do you find that having a background in marketing affects your writing in any way? Not necessarily the way you write, but even just your career as an author. Like, is it a useful tool in your back pocket? And does it ever affect your writing? Do you ever think about your stories from a marketing standpoint while you're writing them? Or is that always a separate thing?
It's a bit of a separate thing. I mean, I recently, there's different things so I always write the book that I want to read. I always want to do something different. I always want to stretch myself. So I never just want to be the same person who does the same kind of book, like book 42 of some crime dramas. They know what they're getting. It's familiar, it's enjoyable. It's a cheese sandwich, and you like a cheese sandwich, great, I'll have another cheese sandwich. And that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, the Jack Reacher books, you know exactly what you're getting. They'll be exciting, they'll be fun. We call them kind of airport books, that when you're flying through your airport, you're on the stand, you read them on the beach, they're great. £5 paperback, and then people just put them on the bin, or they're covered in suntan oil and gives me nightmares. Totally fine, nothing wrong with that. And I'm like, okay, so I want to write fantasy. Some people are immediately going to be turned off by fantasy. Some people still don't. We've talked about the embarrassment factor. In terms of marketing, it helps me in other ways, not when I'm writing the book. So I'm more aware of how important marketing is now than ever before. In terms of social media is really important, even for those who don't really use it much. As a useful tool for getting the word out. And the more that you're out there as a presence, the more people will find you. And that's probably one of the other biggest challenges these days, as you know yourself, is being discovered and being found by readers and potential readers. I mean, if you build up a following, that's great, but you always want more readers. So how do you get them? And it's just by using as many marketing tools and social media tools and putting yourself all over the internet in healthy ways. I should point out. So that if someone Googles you, you pop up everywhere and people go, oh, who's this guy? What's he done? And then you can just start browsing and find out about the book and the work. And that's what we want. So it helps me in that way. But I recently did an interview with Jonathan French, and we were talking about swearing and use of language in books, and that was something that he considered before, and we talked about it as well, and I thought about it, and I think it's like some people, particularly in America, I know, are really put off by swearing. They really cursing, as you call it. They really don't. Okay, they really don't like it, and I've had emails from people about my earlier books going, "Do you have to have so much swearing in it?" And I'm like, well, so some people won't pick up the book, and I knew that going in because of the swearing. It's the same with if you have sex in your book or
anything,
religions, or so it just certain people just immediately turned off.
Yeah,
and I'm okay with that, especially with putting swearing in if it's relevant to the story, if it's context. Like when you're a teenager, you swear all the time because it's cool, and you can, and your mum's not telling you don't say that or I'll smack you, you know. But as you get older, you're more selective with when you swear and how. And it's the same in the books. I use it when it's appropriate. So in my first book, one of the main characters in his group of people that he hangs around with are soldiers. Soldiers swear a lot. It's just when they're not on duty and they're not in front of their superior officer. I've got members of my family who are in the armed forces, and I've met plenty of them. They swear all the time. Like it's just every other word. It's becoming part of the rhythm, just of how they talk. And they're not trying to be offensive. They're not trying to upset anybody. It's just how they are. And so I've put some of that in my book where it was, appropriate. If like you have someone walking into a high counselors meeting and everyone's in elegant gowns in a throne room, and someone comes in and goes, "What the fuck?" It doesn't work. You'd be like, well, that's jarring. It doesn't work. But, if someone dies on the front line, they've just seen their mate stabbed to death, they're not going to go, "Oh, well, never mind. He was a nice chap. I liked him. I'm quite upset about this." So it's about authenticity and context. And there again, that's the kind of thing I'm aware of in the back of my brain from a business side. So when I was 8 or 10, I told my dad I want to be a writer. And I think he said something like, "Well, that's nice, but you need a day job too." And I was like, "What do you know?" Years later, he was right, because the business side has been quite useful in lots of other ways in terms of marketing, promotion, awareness.
Yeah.
I asked a lot more questions of Orbit as a debut author than many others. To be like, why is he asking me these questions? Because of my business background. So I'd ask them about, well, can I see my sales? And they'd be like, yeah. And what are we doing on social media? Well, we're doing this. And what about this? And why is he asking all these questions? What? Oh, okay. So that's kind of been useful, because I'm handing stuff over to other people.
Yeah.
And you kind of like gives me more time to do the writing, but equally I have to kind of give it to someone else and trust them to do it. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. That's why I just keep asking questions all the time.
Do you ever just bug them and like, what are you doing for SEO? Like, do you
at that point, they just start blocking my emails. This person is out of office. You've been out of office for 72 days. You can't still be out of the office. Come on. I ring them up. Hello? Are you dodging my call again? Hello? Hello? Thankfully, I'm not in London and they are. So I will be like at the window, just peering in, be like, I can see you in there.
You're not doing the right keywords. It's in the wrong categories.
It's difficult to kind of, hand. That's one of the kind of things that appeals to me of self-publishing that I'll probably do at some point in the future is you can try something. If it doesn't work, you can go do something else. Like I spoke to Ben Galley, who self-publishes his books, and he said for when he finishes a book to when it goes out, it could be 4 months. And I'm like, 4 months? That's amazing. But he said it could be faster if he really wanted to. But equally, if he tries something, it doesn't work, we can do like a sale for a couple of weeks and then do a thing and then try, and he can try all these things. They're not always going to work, but he can try it. I have to kind of like, what are we doing? What are we doing today? Shut up. Oh, okay.
Can I tell you? Are we changing the price? Can I tell people about it? Yeah, like you just find out there's a sale. You're like, oh, look, my book has been discounted to $4.99. I did not know. Hey, everyone.
Hi, guys. Sale.
I just found out about it. It started yesterday.
A bit different. So it's, I just keep asking questions. They're used to it now. So it's okay. It's okay.
That's good. Honestly, I mean, I think that's nice. I appreciate your efforts on behalf of the other authors who maybe, don't know about it. And therefore, presumably, if you're poking them enough, they might just, then they'll be more on the ball for everybody. I don't know.
I hope so. Yeah,
I
would think so.
That. Yeah. That's nice. I mean, it's, obviously it's in their best interest to sell your books, and yet, yeah, the number of authors who I've heard about going trad and then finding that the marketing teams have done, SFA. Speaking of cursing, but I actually curse with relish. So sweet fuck all was, but just like I abbreviated as SFA. QuaranCon is not a child-friendly channel. Never has been. Okay. So, but is a much larger number than I would expect, right? Like people, I've talked to authors who've gone trad and with like reasonably large publishing houses and just not gotten the support they felt they needed. And of course, these were also folks who did not have a business background themselves, so they weren't able to even like sort of make up for it on their own terms, right? So
yeah. And they've all got their day jobs to do as well on top of that.
Exactly.
And they've got to try and find the time and families and having an actual life. So it's, finding time for all these things is difficult. Balancing. It's always a challenge. Yeah, it is a real balancing act.
So anyway, but so I'm glad that your publishing houses are doing right by you, and that you can poke at them and they don't say we're not publishing your books anymore, Stephen, because you do know.
stop poking us.
So that's great. All right, so we've talked about marketing as an influence in your author job, which is so clearly doesn't really affect the writing, but it does affect
other stuff
the way you monitor your publishers. Which is what I would expect too, right? Like there's just, and it's different. I'm sure that marketing for a very large company that sells stuff that's not books is going to be different than marketing books, but a lot of the concepts remain the same. And so,
yeah, definitely.
That's got to be handy. Part of me deeply wishes that I had a marketing background before I started writing, because oh boy, could I use one. I do love self-publishing for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
But I do not enjoy doing the marketing myself, and I'm bad at it. And so if you ever are looking for another freelance, teach a class, or gosh, I would pay a fairly large sum of money to have someone else do my marketing. If you ever feel like helping me sell books, additional freelance gig once the one you're on runs up, then let me know. All right, so moving on to sillier things, or not silly actually, but entertainment type thing. Video games. I gather that you play some video games periodically.
I've been playing them since they existed.
Yes, same
basically. Yeah, since the early days of the ZX Spectrum, which is the early game that would crash. You'd load it for 20 minutes and it would crash. You'd be like, oh God, and then you'd load it again. Yeah. I've gone through all the consoles up to a certain point, and then eventually I switched to PC, and I've been a PC gamer for like 20 years now.
Yeah. It's nice to not have to switch the controls, right?
I recently got a Nintendo Switch, and I have enjoyed that. I played Zelda through twice. Nice. It's so relaxing. Sometimes I just wander through the fields, cutting the grass, chasing crickets, hang gliding around the place. It's amazing. It's so relaxing. It's an amazing game.
I really need to play the newer Zeldas, because to be perfectly honest, I've really only played the original Zelda, which is not a relaxing game because everything kills you really quickly. And there's just monsters everywhere popping out from nowhere.
There's lots of them, yeah.
I find it somewhat relaxing still, just because it's the nostalgia factor. Like I'll turn it on and be like, oh, I'm 7 again, or 5. I can't remember how old I was when it came out. But it's not. It's still really like I'm bad at it. Like I keep dying. I basically my daughter likes to play. I have a EMU converter emulator. There we go. That's it. And so I've taught her how to play Super Mario Brothers, the original.
Nice.
And then the original Zelda a little bit too. But lot of dying.
Yeah.
But anyway, cool. So what are so a lot of Zelda to relax. What are some other ones that are either less relaxing? Are there any? Do you like puzzle games at all, or games that have puzzles built in?
Kind of. Sometimes I do kind of word games and things, but I used to play a lot of the MMOs.
Yeah.
So I started with the first ones. So I played the first one I ever played was EverQuest.
EverQuest.
Back in the day, and this was before we had Discord chats and WhatsApp chats, and I'd play with 3 or 4 friends, and it'd be on dial-up back then. Of course, it wasn't broadband, so we'd ring each other on the phone and be like, "Be on in 20 minutes, go right," and then you'd play and you talk to each other in the chat box. That was the only way you form a party, and then you just. And now you can just kind of say, "Go and do this," okay, and you go and do it. But then you couldn't be like, "What are you doing?"
Heal, yeah. It's like
So
slash
I
S
played,
and then say stuff, and
I played EverQuest a lot. Loads of other ones.
Did you play World of Warcraft?
I've played that since the beginning. So I've been cold turkey on Warcraft for about 7 years now. I think 7 or 8 years I've been clean.
Yeah.
It is addictive. It's just, I played it and played it and played it and explored it and did everything and did all the dungeons and all the raids and got all the best kit. And then I was like, oh, now what? And then they bring out the next expansion. Okay, there we go again. And after a while, I'm like, it's just eating so much time and I want to spend more time writing, less time playing. So I just cut myself off.
That is legit. I actually only ever turn it on if I'm on a writing break. So if I'm between books, if I've finished a project. So right now, I'm teaching the daughter World of Warcraft. She's got a level 13 night elf hunter.
Dangerous.
that we've been playing for the last few days. But I'm set to turn it off in the next couple of days here because I need to get back to writing. I've actually been pretty good about only playing with her, which helps.
Yeah, that's good. Henry Cavill plays.
Yeah, I know.
I like the idea of, at one point I've been on a raid and a healer's done something and I've called him a noob and it turned out to be Henry Cavill. And it's kind of like, at some point it must have happened. I'd be like, you idiot. And it's Henry Cavill. I'll show you. He sat there like, furiously hammering his keyboard. I'd be like, I like that idea somewhere at some point.
It's a nice idea. He plays a lot of Witcher though. Like that's one of his all-time.
And Vin Diesel, he played a lot of Warcraft, so I probably called him an idiot at some point as well. He's a massive D&D. I used to play D&D a lot as well. Yeah. I hadn't played that in years either, but I used to play a lot. I've got my bag of dice in the drawer, and every now I take them out and just look at them fondly and listen to the rattle of dice, 220 D20s.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the thing. You know what QuaranCon hasn't done that some other conventions have done is have a D&D session with some authors, right?
Yeah.
And we haven't done it yet, which is a shame because I freaking love Dungeons and Dragons and I still play. My brother and I have an ongoing campaign we've been running for 20 years now. That really the only reason it's lasted this long is because we play it maybe once a year, sometimes once every 2 or 3. And so, we've reached massively epic level. Like everybody's level 20 something, and we're about to fight some gods. Like that's what's coming up next. But I love D&D, and I've got a couple friends who are great DMs, and I should really throw together a QuaranCon D&D session, and you'll be invited for sure. And maybe we'll see if we can get RJ. He's only done like one D&D game in his life, but he'd be hilarious to have around.
I saw him do one recently, and I started laughing, and I just thought, oh God, here we go.
But maybe. Yeah, maybe we can get Andrea Stewart to join us. I think she might play. We'll have to. Kay Esvioso, I bet we could get her to join us.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, my friend of mine made his own system, like because we played D&D and he got annoyed by things, and so like 20 years ago he built his own system based upon his own fantasy world with all races. And we started playing that. It was amazing, and then I haven't seen him in a few years, and recently he said, "Oh, we started a new one online through Zoom," and I'm like, "Sign me up!" So, so I'm gonna do that again soon, and I can't wait. I'm just, awesome. We'll be there. But we in the old days before I was old, we'd start playing at like 7 o'clock in the evening,
right?
And the sun's coming out at 5, and you'd be like, "We should really go to bed." Yeah, okay. Get a few hours sleep, and then wake up, have breakfast, and start again.
Yes.
And you do that for like the weekend. I miss those days, but I don't think I could do the full 8 to 12 hour stretch.
Yeah.
Playing solid.
It'd be good though. Yeah. And that's the problem, right? Is always the sessions are too short. And like my brother and I, when we try to play now, it's like, okay, how much can we squeeze in between children's bedtime and children waking up?
We once did a bit of a short campaign in person at a convention in the UK. There was like 5 of us, and that was quite good. But it was originally, we had like a quiet room in a quiet table in a separate room. That's what we were told. When we got there, we couldn't use that room, so we had a table in the middle of a really busy area where people kept coming up and wandering behind. And I'm like, there's 0 atmosphere to the game because of that. You just kind of want to get your head in that space, and with the noise, it just it's not the same. It's difficult. But I've never been I've been a GM twice because it feels too much like work, like writing. It's like, I know what happens. There's a troll. What does he look like? I don't know. This is what I do. I don't do this again. So I love being just a player, and people tell me what to do. I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Right, where are we going now? And I just go on the adventure. That's what I want. Yeah,
for sure. I actually, so my brother DMs whenever we play, and I love it. And he's, a physics prof, and I'm the writer, and but we totally reverse those roles, and he loves it. Like he loves coming up with the story for a dungeon, right? Like it's
just fun. Some people,
and I actually don't mind it. I've done it for friends who've never played D&D before, and I've done it for my daughter, and like I'll come up with a campaign on the fly that's nice and short, and hopefully doesn't kill anybody when they're just brand new. Like I was like, oh, your first time playing, and you're dead.
And dead.
I once almost killed an entire party because I was like, oh yeah, level 3 hellhounds shouldn't be a big deal. Like having, this is like I've gone and played MMORPGs for too long, and you're just the like, higher levels not being, that's a level 3 fine. And like, whoa, no, what am I talking about? Like, and some very lucky rolls, like people legit rolled a couple natural 20s, and that was the only thing that saved them. But
it's like you're not getting out of it otherwise.
Anyway, so excellent. All right, so we know some. What else? Is there anything else like you do for fun? Make swords on occasion.
Big comics fan. Been reading a long time. That's my to read pile of fantasy books.
Lovely.
There's more buried behind that level. So I've always read fantasy. I've never not read fantasy. Like, even, people say, do you not get bored of it reading and writing? And I'm like, well, not really, because everything's so different. Like I read a book and I think, I never would have come up with that idea. I never would have written this story. This is awesome. And I'm like, right, okay, great. Off we go.
I mean, there's infinite options. Like, well, I can't, I'm the same. I read so much fantasy. I read other genres occasionally too, but fantasy is my go-to. And there's just so much. There's so many options. Like, why would you not? I don't know.
It's the other thing of everybody's lens is completely different. So you can give 2 people the same basic premise. It's one thing I've always wanted to try, actually, for an anthology, is to give 10 people the same core concept for a story. They go off, they write it, and they come back, and you'll see how different they are. And that'll just prove the point that, you just go off and do it, and they'll be like, wow. And they just, the closest thing I ever got to doing that was me and 3 friends. I came up with a core structure for a comic book. And I said, right, these are the kind of stories, this is the kind of rules, pitch me ideas, and then we all agree on the best ones, and then we'll go away and write our own individual issues. And the stuff that came back, I'm like, I would never have thought of that. That was brilliant. And it's just because the one guy has such an amazing imagination. He's got such a unique perspective. I'm like, I never would have come up with that in 100 years, but that was just how he saw it, and he went off and took the idea. And I was just thinking, that would be a fascinating idea to try at some point.
It's cool. There's a literary magazine in the US called The First Line, and it is very much like it sounds. Each issue has a first line as the prompt, which they release. They release all 4. They do 4 issues a year, and they release all 4 at the start of the year. And then authors submit a story that starts with that first line, and all 10 or 12, however many stories they put in each issue, all start with the same first line. But of course, one of the things they do as editors is to choose as many varied stories as they can, and the genres are always totally different, and everything about the story is completely different. And they all start with the exact same opener, and I love that. It's such a cool such a cool concept. And so that magazine's really fun to read. It's fun to submit to. I managed to get one story published with them a while back, but
Nice.
yeah, it's they're a fun lit mag. Very small press out of Texas, but anyway. So if you ever feel like playing with that and not having to organize it yourself, you can
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah.
Shoot them a story. But I love that idea very much. And I'm actually organizing an anthology right now that's it's about grief and healing, and that's the core concept. And then everyone's submitting their stories, and it's amazing. It's like delightful how different they all are, right? Even with that same theme to start with. All right. But if you ever do that anthology, let me know, because I'd just love to read it. That sounds cool.
Just something I've been pondering, whenever I spare a minute.
Right,
coloring,
yes, because you've got so much free time kicking around.
Yeah.
No big deal.
No big deal.
All right, well, let's move along then. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of things you do to relax. Is there anything else you want to add? You mentioned yoga in an interview with Justin. How often do you do yoga?
Couple of times a week. So nice. There's a former WWE wrestler who's now retired, Diamond Dallas Page. I don't know if are you an old school? Are you a WWE fan? You ever
I'm
been
not. I never have
so
been.
I was.
That level of theater has never been my thing. But
it's there again. It's drama. It's
totally.
one of the longest ongoing kind of soap operas in America. The wrestling. It's amazing. Yeah. So I'm like from the Attitude Era, which is kind of like the 90s. That was what I grew up loving and watching. And he's an older wrestler who retired, and he's beat up and he hurts and he's aching, and his wife's like, why don't you try and do some yoga? That'll help you. And he's like, I don't know yoga. No, I'm a man's man. Blah. And then she persuaded him. He started doing it. He's like, this kind of helps me. I kind of feel better now. And he developed his own system based on other various principles. And he's helped so many people, combined with nutrition, lose weight, gain mobility. It's low impact on joints. And because I'm very, very tall, you can't see because I'm sat down. I'm like 6'5".
Oh, really?
So yeah. So
this is the thing about Zoom, and it just blows my mind. There are so many people I've met online. If I ever meet them in person, I'm just going to be like, what?
At any convention in the UK, the two tallest people in the room are me and James Smythe, and it's not James, it's me. He's like 2 inches taller than me. Well, that's quite disconcerting. But everybody else in the UK, in terms of the fantasy and sci-fi scene, are munchkins. To be fair, Adrian Tchaikovsky's like 6 foot, but
is he? Well, Rob Hayes is also like 6 foot, or just over 6. Yeah.
Anyway, so I've got a really tall back, so I need to look after my back and my shoulders, and I hunch because I'm so tall. So doing yoga helps me. It keeps me, agile, and just looks after my back a bit, which I need. And because if you sit down all day as well for your day job, I need to get out and stretch. So I do that, and I grow a lot of stuff in the garden.
I was going to ask
greenhouse
about that.
Yeah.
What do you garden? I garden also.
Okay, so at the moment in the greenhouse, I've just finished my crop of strawberries. They're all delicious. They came out really well. The cucumbers are coming up, tomatoes, the blueberry plant is going well. Nice. I'm growing some herbs that I'll then put in the garden. So I'm doing echinacea and lemon balm, which you can make tea. Lavender at the front, use that for gin, for somebody who likes it to flavor their gin. So
somebody? Are we?
Somebody. I've got peas, and I've got mange too, and lots of different things. But cool. I need more space, so I've got like an allotment now. Nice. But it's a mess. It needs clearing, so I'm busy clearing it at the moment. It's just covered in weeds. So always. So what are you growing at the moment?
To start. So we have a really late season here because we can't plant until June 1st frost. Our last frost isn't until June 1st, basically. So everything went in the ground 2 weeks ago, but I've got cucumbers and zucchini coming up, peas, tomatoes, Swiss chard, kale, beets, carrots, really a lot of tomatoes because we really love them. And then we'll can whatever we've got left over at the end of the season. Pumpkins, and I love our garden. Pumpkins grow so nicely, and then we have pumpkin pie and pumpkin bread all winter long, and it's delightful. What What else? I feel like I'm forgetting something. Corn. We do some corn, a small corn patch.
I try things and I sometimes just fail. I'm like, I want to do something else, and I go back and try it again. And I'm doing spring onions this year. They're working. Radishes are dead easy to grow.
Oh, good.
It's so easy and so lovely. You just kind of have to keep putting them in because they come up so quick. So.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yeah, they grow in like 3 or 4 weeks. So if you do like a trough, plant them, and then 2 weeks later do another lot, and then you eat the first lot and then plant, and you constantly, you have a supply. You're just constantly going through them. So
that's cool. I did not know that. I've never tried to grow radishes, but we should.
Really quick, very easy to grow. Yeah, nice. Super fast. Don't take much space. So
we get.
There you go.
The beets grow pretty quickly, and I bet we could probably squeeze in 2 rounds of beets, but we're just terrible at harvesting them. Like they grow in and then we're like, well, we'll get to them, and we sort of basically just pull stuff as we eat it, and we just don't eat beets fast enough to like get through those. I do 1 row of beets, and then Corey will make some borscht, or we'll do like beet salads or roasted beets with potatoes and stuff. We're not growing potatoes this year, but we have in the past.
Yeah, me too. I've done it in the past, but they're a lot of work. Well,
the hilling,
a lot of space for kind of, and you don't get much, even with, and then you have to do a lot more buckets to get a lot more. And I'm just like, I'll do something different. I want to try something different, and fair
enough. We have a really like a wide variety of tomatoes, and we've got a friend who does heirloom seedlings that we can get from her, and they're delightful. She does like different tomatoes every year, and like a whole different round. She gets her seeds from some organic source. I don't remember where she buys them, but whatever, it doesn't matter. And and so then she grows them. Like we tried doing our own seedlings this year and last year. Last year it was so pathetic. They were like this tall. Our house is very cold. They were like this tall before we put them in the ground, and they died instantly, of course. This year they were like this tall when we put them in the ground, and they're still alive. But they're way behind. We finally got a heating pad, which made a huge difference. We have those like the seedlings we get from our friend are like, proper.
Nice.
And then so we'll have lots of tomatoes, but I'm excited to just like see how the ones we grew ourselves go, because we grew them from seed. It's like, come on, little guys.
I like experimenting and trying different things, just seeing how it does, and you learn every time and get better and better. So nice. It's all part of the process.
Yeah, and it's a fun thing. It's a good way to get outside. Like, and I found, especially, I mean, I always gardened before the pandemic, but during the pandemic in particular, it's been like, oh, thank goodness we have this.
This green space. I mean, a lot of people don't have the green space, or
we're so lucky,
a balcony or anything. And I've got a garden, so I'm very happy that I can just go out there and get some fresh air and walk around, and it's great.
Yeah,
it's really nice.
Do something in the sun. We're so lucky. I've got one of my good friends who lives in an apartment. She did a balcony garden this year because she had moved over in the middle of the pandemic, and now is in an apartment that has a balcony, whereas her last one didn't. And she's so excited. She's got this balcony garden growing in all these, like recycling tubs and stuff, and she's stoked. And I was stoked.
Pallets are really good for growing things, and space wise, and they're quite compact, and you can just do tons of stuff in them, so they're really good.
She's got her set up, and I don't even, but it's great. Nice. And I'm so happy for everybody who has a chance to do that. But we're very lucky. All right.
Do you have any questions from the people?
Let's check. What do we got? Anita Stewart says, what is your favorite action movie?
Oh, that is a good question. It's either Predator or Die Hard.
Oh, I know.
They're both kind of perfect in their own way, because they can't be made better. They've tried over and over and over and over and over again with sequels and reboots, and they're so over the top, and they're so ridiculous, and they're so brilliant. And I recently read a book a couple of years ago called Born to be Bad. It's a series of interviews that a guy called Tai Singh did with lots of actors who played villains. And one chunk of the book is he spoke to as many of the surviving people who worked on the original Die Hard as he could.
Oh, cool.
So it was people who, who played the guy who played Theo in in Die Hard and a bunch of others, and the stories they had about working on the film, but also Alan Rickman, who sadly now passed away.
I know.
Were wonderful. So Alan
Yeah.
Rickman, and I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy played Carl. He was also
yeah, I know the act, but I don't know his name. I'm terrible.
He's a former ballerina, and he's from Russia. And there's Alan Rickman, who's an Englishman. And in between, when they're working things, those two would sit in their
trailers.
Winnebagos, trailers, playing chess all day and talking about theater and literature. And everyone else is like, want a beer? And these two guys are just there like, we're quite all right, thank you. And playing chess. And they just like, when they first did the Alan came on, because he's a theater background, and he started saying the lines, everyone was staring, and I'm like, why is he talking so slowly? This is gonna take forever. And then once they realized what he was doing, they're like, well, this is brilliant. He's amazing. And they understood that he was enunciating and talking in a very precise way, because he's used to it from his theater background. And they were like, what? And then watched the film and loved him. Like, yeah, okay, he knew what he was doing. But yeah, so I think Die Hard or Predator.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Fair enough. All right. Good question. Good answers.
Good question.
Good question. So there you go, Anita. That's a solid vote. My vote is for Die Hard. Personally, I did enjoy Predator, but I don't know. Die Hard to me seems like the more epitome of an action movie. I don't know.
If you scrape away some of the kind of really machismo stuff in Predator, there's mythology that they touch on. They exploit in the other films, but they never quite get it right. There's little things that you don't. There again, she tells you a little thing, and your imagination does the rest. Like she says they come when it's really hot, and you're like, who comes? How do you know? And her grandmother told her, and you're like, oh my god, how long have they been coming? And then your brain just starts working, and you're like, have they been coming for hundreds of years, thousands? Were cavemen fighting them? What's going on? You just don't know. And it's just like, brilliant.
So much. Yeah, fair enough. But you said the key part for me, which was scrape away the machismo, which is
it's so much. Just there's that scene with Jesse Ventura in the helicopter. And you want some of this? I'll tell you, this sexual Tyrannosaurus, just like me, with his chewing tobacco. And it's like, okay, sure thing, Jesse.
Run away. Yeah. So I think that was always my problem with Predator. But it's not that I didn't enjoy it, but just that like on an overall enjoyment scale, I found Die Hard more easy to love.
Jean-Claude Van Damme was originally in Predator.
Was it really originally?
Yeah, I see. I do an action movie podcast. I know all this stuff.
Yeah, so, you got all the extra random.
Yeah, he was originally the monster in Predator.
Oh, that's amazing. Do you want to
go on?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go on.
I was just gonna say, like my one of my favorite action movies from childhood was Bloodsport. Like that legit. I watched that movie so many times.
Always. Yep.
In it for the splits, really. Okay, so we got another question. We have a couple, maybe. Fiddles T. Brigand. Do you know the screen name? Is this a person who shows
Fiddles?
up? Okay. Fiddles T. Brigand. Might be someone who follows QuaranCon in general. I actually am not sure. My memory is terrible. But so appropriately for SFF, the author scene consists of trees and pixie folk? ? That must be in reference to something we already said, but I honestly can't figure out what.
I don't know.
Oh wait, trees, you're a tree, and pixie folk, everyone else. I believe that was a height joke. Okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah, everyone is. I in this country, I feel like Gulliver most of the time. Every time I visit America, no one stares at me because there's a lot more tall people in America.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm uncommonly tall in the UK. There are tall people, but it's more uncommon.
Right. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, 6'5", I feel is tall enough. No one's, I don't know. Yeah, it's fair. Maybe no one will actually stare in the US because we do.
They've seen. I went into a sports shop and a women's NBA team were there, and I just followed them around. I'm like, wow, this is a new perspective. Wow, what's this like?
Shorter than all the ladies before.
Hi, ladies. How are you? They're like, who's this little guy?
Excellent. That's awesome.
I felt like I was 3 again. It's fun.
That's hilarious. Amazing. I was actually just last night talking to my siblings actually on a Zoom call about my buddy. When I was at Georgetown, I had one good friend who was actually on the Georgetown basketball team, and he was your height or taller. He was somewhere between 6'5" and 6'7". I don't actually remember, because once you're that tall, I'm sorry, I'm just like, I know I had to crane my neck all the time. That's
all that matters.
Yes, it's a muscle memory.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was just, I'm just thinking of like, yeah, basketball players. Like you could look at him and be like, yes, that's a basketball player, which is not fair, because I mean, now he's not a pro basketball player. He's like a lawyer, you know, like he's just like, I don't remember what his actual job is, but that was certainly, that's the physical impression you get meeting someone that tall. And I'm sure you get asked that all the time. I feel like that's a thing, at least in the US, everyone always asks anyone your height. The very first question is, do you play basketball? Yeah. Which I'm not going to ask you. I'm not asking that question. I'm just,
no. Okay, let's move on. See next question.
Unless you want to answer it, in this case, go for it. If you want to like brag about your mad hoop skills, that's fine. But...
Nope. Nope, none of that.
So more from Fiddles T. Brigand. We've got, if you could change one thing about publishing, any single thing at all, just overnight, and bam, it's different, what is your wish?
Ooh, that's a good question. I wish the books came out faster. There's a lot of reasons that they don't, and there's a lot of reasons that they can't, but I wish that they could come out a lot faster, because the time between books can hurt authors. If people, because nowadays there's so many books coming out and there's so many other distractions for our attention. We just talked about some of them, that you know, finding the time to read and focusing on a book and remembering when the next one comes out and this kind of stuff. So I mean, for Orbit did this thing, and for me and a bunch of other debut authors, where they give us a longer lead time up front, so that our first trilogy or series came out every 6 months.
Oh, good. Nice.
So I had like September 2015, and then I think it was like April, and then September again. So after 12 calendar months, all 3 books are out, and that's quite good, because someone goes, when's the next one? 6 months. Oh, okay. And they kind of hold on to it. But but then once you've burnt up that lead time,
right,
you know, do you take 2 years off to then put out the next trilogy every 6 months, and then people are like, you've forgotten about you in 2 years, so you do another book a year and another book a year, which is what I did, and just carried on like that. So I don't know. Yeah, that's probably one thing I'd probably change somehow, with a time turner. You know,
the time turner with a I mean, that is one of the edges that indie has over trad in that regard, is that if one writes ahead or can write quickly, then one can release as quickly as one likes. But it's a tough one in general. All right, so timing is a thing you would fix, and and that one's for both host and guest. Okay. Well, if I could change anything about publishing, the answer that I would give would actually require changing society, period, but I would eliminate the racism inherent in publishing, and the traces of colonialism. Yeah, sorry, I went big. The question was like, you could change one thing and it's fixed overnight, and I'm like, so, well, hey, you know,
magic powers, no limits to magic powers.
I followed the rules of the question, although it would require a big fix. I mean, I'd be sweet if you could fix it in publishing miraculously on its own without fixing the rest of society. I mean, I want to fix the rest of society also, but anyway, whatever. I don't know how you disentangle those two. But there we go. If I could wish for anything, it would be that. Trying to remember Predator. Okay. Most of the rest of their comments. Folks, if you have more questions, throw them in. I still have more, so fear not. We shall continue. Oh, by the way, I should have asked, do you need to be anywhere later?
I'm all right at the moment.
All right, good. All right. Because I usually run these things for like 90 minutes, and the hard cutoff is 2 hours, but only because I don't expect people to like sit around for that long. Though we get people who stay for the entire time. But you know, feature film length at that point. So All right. I have so many more questions. We can just
Go for it.
keep going right along. What is your preferred? We're going to get back to writing, and we're going to talk a little bit about process, but from an odd angle. What's your favorite writing beverage? What thing do you like to drink while you're writing? And is it different from what you drink while you're editing?
I don't really drink much when I'm writing at all. I just like
water. I mean, like I'm not. This is not.
Yeah.
You don't have to be alcoholic. I'm caffeine.
No, I love coffee. I kind of have it in the morning to keep me going, and then that's kind of it. Throughout the day, I drink a lot of water. Really, that's about it. I just don't drink. I don't drink a lot of sugary drinks so much these days. But yeah, music's a thing. But what I drink or as I'm writing isn't a thing. But music definitely. A lot of people do though. With music, it's always
Can you do lyrics? Does it have to be instrumental only? Yeah,
soundtracks. So I have lots and lots of soundtracks and instrumental and mood music, and sometimes I use the thunder and lightning generator.
Oh,
have you not done this?
Not for writing. I'd use it to put my kid to sleep.
So there's a free app, and it's on the internet as well. You can just pull up at the website, and it comes with a bunch of like graphic equalizers and like rain, and then distant thunder, close thunder, and you set it to what you want.
Oh, nice.
Rain like on like a tent, or like feel like breaking on something. So you set it up, and then, but you can also sort of use it as on an app on your phone and put a timer on. So you can sort of put it on 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, it turns itself off. It just turns itself off. So you're just drifting off to sleep with the sound of But I use it for writing sometimes when I need to block out everything that's going on and music isn't working and silence isn't working. I'll put the thunder and lightning generator on, and you just somewhere in the background there's a bit of thunder rumbling, and then you just hear the rain coming down. It's so relaxing. It just and then you start writing. So
very nice. I'm gonna have to try that, because I definitely do. I do instrumental music all the time, soundtracks, like
yes,
mad. Always the key of like finding the right soundtrack for the scene I'm writing or whatever. But love that. But I haven't done the nature noises for writing. I use them for other things. I use them for meditating. I use them for going to sleep, putting the kid to bed.
It's kind of like white noise. It just sort of puts my head in a certain space. I mean, all of these things become muscles and kind of triggers, like you become like Pavlov's cat, a dog rather. I say Pavlov's cat because my cat is we got two cats, and one, when you tap her bowl, she just turns up. She's now become Pavlov's dog. Whether she's hungry or not, she taps the bowl. She's like, yes, I'm here. What is it? But it's the same. I put the music on. I sit at the same keyboard, put my hand in the same seat, and I'm like, oh right, I'm in writing mode now. Right. And the music and sometimes the rain sounds gets my brain into that kind of gear, and I go, oh okay, and I start work. So
that's very cool. I find that my brain really needs something to ignore. And so silence in the house doesn't do it, because then any noise is distracting. Yeah. And so I need like one thing that I can ignore easily, and it's either music but I think that like the nature sounds might work too. I got to try that. That'd be cool. Maybe the ocean, because I've been writing some books on ships lately, so maybe I should try that. Find some whale sounds and anyway, very cool. I like that. I've totally lost my place in the list of questions. Okay. Still writing related-ish. Well, reading and writing related. But a little on the silly side. If you could choose to go adventuring in any fantasy world, yours or someone else's, book, not game, because game you already get to do that. So this is take a book, take something that you can't actually adventure in currently, and what would you choose? Which would it be and why?
I thought about this, and I always think I'd always like to say an interesting world that's full of danger and weird things, but in reality, I really wouldn't want to. I'd want to go somewhere really quite safe. Like I'd love to go to Arrakis and wander around the sand dunes and ride one of the worms. In reality, I'd probably get eaten really quickly, or I'd die within like an hour and dehydrate in a sand dune. They just find my desiccated corpse one day. And I don't do well. So I'm thinking, this is way too dangerous, way too dangerous. So maybe wander around the Shire and just spend like in Terry Pratchett, you've got the really tall dwarf. I can just sort of say, oh, I'm the really tall hobbit. Yeah. I'm so-and-so's cousin. I'm Bombadil's cousin. They're pretty furry, actually.
Nice. All right, you got that covered.
So yeah, I could do that, and I'd just sit around for a month, eating and drinking and singing and
smoking,
getting really fat and round and smoking. I think that would be quite a pleasurable way to spend like a month, just a month, and read. That's the other thing. Nothing happens in the Shire, so you can chill. It's like going on holiday. I could just take a stack of books, like I do when I go on holiday. There isn't a pool in the Shire, but
I'm sure you can make one.
I could just pour, and just chill out for a month, read books, eat, drink, listen to songs, smoke,
have 11sies,
get a big pipe for some reason, like they all do. That would be pretty awesome, I think.
That's
nice
fair.
and safe. Yeah,
solid answer. I like that. And very honest. It's like, don't want to die, don't really want to fight things.
I want to ride a sandworm. I wouldn't get to ride a sandworm. It wouldn't happen. I'd get stabbed by a Fremen, or I'd just end up a slave somewhere. Or a face dancer would take my face and use it, and I'd just be dead in an alley somewhere. So just too dangerous. Way too dangerous.
The risks in most fantasy worlds are quite high. And I have to say, RJ Barker answered this question similarly. He's like, I'd never go to one of my own fantasy worlds. Like, they're far too dangerous. I'd die.
His are. Yeah. His are all pretty brutal. It's like,
they're all trying to kill you. Yeah.
Assassins trying to stab you, and
and in the bone ships, like the plants are trying to kill you. There's just everything is trying to kill you in that world. So no, it's fair, right? It is actually, I'm like, I'd be hard pressed to come up with, aside from the Shire, like which are the fantasy worlds where you could just you could hang out and it would be fun without getting killed.
Somewhere chilled, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is, if you go to most places, like at the end of the arc of whatever epic thing it is, it might be okay. Because by then it's usually safe. If it's not one of those worlds that's just constantly trying to kill you anyway.
Yeah.
But but no, it's a great answer. Love it. Okay. And now, like, very important, but we've got to do it.
Okay.
What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
Do you mean African or European?
I don't know that. Excellent. You've passed the test. We may move on.
I grew up watching them many times over the years.
Same. I feel like I'm gonna soon probably wind up interviewing someone who's young enough that they will have no idea.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm now at the point where I meet people who are going to university and they were born after the millennium. I'm like, that was like 5 years ago. Well, no, wait. Oh no.
In the US, drinking age is 21, right?
Yes.
And now to check people's IDs, any number that starts with 19 is automatically
that's just
like, let's all pack it in and go home.
Yeah, that's it. I'm done.
We're done. So I'm just waiting for the moment when I interview someone who just like looks at me blankly, or if I say, inconceivable, and then they don't say it. You keep using that word. I don't think that means what you think it means. And then if they don't do that, I'm going to be like, I'm done. I can't interview people anymore because I'm too old to make jokes.
I've heard Robin Wright's stories about working on that film.
No, I've not.
And like Andre the Giant was a former wrestler and all the rest of it. And because he was so massive, like they were working outside, it was very, very cold. And she's I'm really cold. And he'd say, come here. And he'd put his hands around her head like that because they're so big. And she'd be like, oh, I'm really warm now. Because he's like a giant hand muffle, she'd just grip her head and just warm her whole head up. And she'd be like, oh, I feel great now. Thanks, Andre. You're welcome.
God.
But he'd drink and be perfectly sober and drive home.
Right, sure.
Just monstrous man, giant, Bless him.
I've heard a number of stories about him, and it always just sounds like he was one of the most delightful humans. Maybe don't even correct me if you know something that makes that.
No, he was a lovely man. If he liked you from listening to wrestlers over the years, and if you were a good person and you treated the business with respect, he would treat you with respect. If he didn't like you, you were in trouble because nobody can move him. How do you move an actual giant? You don't. No. You run really fast. That's basically it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's funny because you don't expect any realism in a movie like The Princess Bride, but legit, the Dread Pirate Roberts attack on Andre is really the only thing that would work. Is you have to climb onto his back, hold onto his head, hope he can't, or that you can still hold on while he's smushing you against a rock. And if
Yep.
you can survive that, then you can maybe choke him into unconsciousness. That's all you've
Maybe
got.
if you're really lucky.
Really lucky, yeah.
Really lucky. Yeah.
Well, and obviously, the Dread Pirate Roberts is quite lucky.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Really, another important question: dogs, cats, or reptiles?
We have cats. I like cats
Yeah.
best. I like dogs. They're nice. Nothing against them. Never had a reptile. But I'm a big cat person.
Very good.
Love them. Yeah.
I love all furry animals, and I love reptiles, and so there's no wrong answer for when it comes to that question, in my opinion. People are always like, oh, are we going to start a fight about cats versus dogs? I'm like, no, we're not. Cats are lovely, dogs are lovely, reptiles are lovely, birds are also lovely. Like, I'm just like, whatever pets people want to keep, as long as it's not cruel, I'm in favor. So lovely. Cats. You said you have two?
Two.
How old are they?
They're both 11.
Oh, siblings?
No, and they don't get on still. After 11 years, I'm like, come on, guys, this is just ridiculous. You live together for 11 years. Just, I'm like, oh, God.
Are they the same sex or?
No, boy and a girl.
Oh, wow. And they still hate each other.
Yeah, they just don't get on. So they make space, but they're all right. They manage.
Right. Do they mostly ignore each other now?
Yeah. He's always trying to sit with her, and she's just not interested. So poor him. You can't scooch up next to her and sit next to her if he can get away with it. So, bless him.
Ah, yeah, bless. He tries. Yeah. Okay, so earlier, now we're actually going to go back to being minorly serious about writing. Earlier, we talked about what your return readers could expect from this new book. But to bring in new readers, because hopefully there are some watching, that's kind of the idea. To bring in some new readers, what would you tell new readers? What is one thing, if you could tell new readers one thing about you or your work, what would it be?
Ooh.
Aside from the fact that you're 6'5", which obviously should draw in loads of readers.
Yeah. Lots of really tall people rushing to the bookshops. He's one of us, guys. I'll get the book.
Put it on the top shelf.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And then only tall people can buy the book. No, wait, no. Yeah. About me, I don't know. As I said, I love fantasy. I've been reading it my entire life. And so if you ever read something in my book and you think that's a bit of a trope, there's a good reason. A, it's there on purpose. B, I've done it for a reason. And C, I've probably done something with a bit of a twist. So always expect the unexpected, I'd say, about my work. That if there's something there, there's a reason. Nothing is there by happenstance. I plan all my books. That's the other thing. I'm not like RJ, who just kind of wanders around with a quill, thinking up things and a bit of parchment, laying on his chaise lounge and just
of course.
having his butler write for him and stuff. No, so I plan all my books, so I know most of what's going to happen. I've tried it without, and it doesn't work. So I like doing payoffs. I like having Easter eggs. There are about 100 things in pop culture that I love that are sprinkled throughout all my books.
Nice.
There's a great one in this book that's a nod to another fairly popular fantasy author. Okay. It's a tiny blink and you miss it thing. Anybody who gets it first will get a hello from me or something. They'll get something from me. I don't know. There's a tiny nod, but there's lots of other things in there that I absolutely love. To the point where on my 6th book, so the last one that I did for Orbit, the dedication in it, in the front of the book, is to J. Michael Straczynski, who created Babylon 5, and he worked on Sense 8, and he's wrote The Changeling, which won an Oscar, and all these kind of things. There's a nod. I thank him for all of his stories, because there's nods in the books to him as well, and to stuff that he's created. One of my friends who I've known for like 30 years, he read my first book and went, "Is this what I think it is?" I was like, "You're all right, sir. You're all right." It's like, "Oh, okay, just checking." I was like,
nice, yeah. it's delightful when people actually find them.
Oh yes.
And then
So
ask you about them, right? Because otherwise you just say you put them out there
you're
because
like,
they tickle you, and then you hope that someone else finds them, right? It's so nice when people actually see them. Yeah, that's lovely. I turned one of my friends who helps me with the Japanese because I use some Japanese in my Japanese inspired fantasy books, and he's a translator, and I ask him for help all the time, and he very dearly, like, despite the fact that it's his job, he does it for me for free, very kindly. So I always send him signed copies and stuff, right? And but I totally wrote him into the book as an Easter egg, so I tried to make it subtle enough. And I'm stoked because my husband read the book and he couldn't find it. He knew, I told him in advance that there was a reference to this friend of ours, and he'd missed it entirely. But the friend read it, and then I think it was last night or the night before, he tweeted me and he's like, "Hey, was it this?" I was like, "Yeah." he found where I had written him in, and he's like, "It was so awesome!" I'm like, "Yay!" So that's always nice when it actually, when people notice, like,
yeah, when it pays off.
Yeah,
definitely.
And that's a very specific one that, like, obviously literally only one person was going to get.
Yes, but then they read it and they found it, so that's a good thing.
But then having the more general ones, like, I put so many of those into my stuff, and
oh yeah, me too.
And always wonder if anyone's ever going to notice, because but yeah, that's great. I'm now going to keep my eyes out for the one you just mentioned in The Coward and see if I find it, if I haven't read past it already.
No, you haven't.
I haven't. Okay. Oh, good.
No.
All right.
It's in the second half.
It's in the second half. Okay.
There's a clue. It's in the second half of the book. It's a very small thing. It's a very small nod to something else by another author.
Right.
A very popular fantasy author. There you go.
Okay. All right. I'm going to keep an eye out for it. Cool. That's exciting. If I find anything that I think it is, I'll
message me. Let me know. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll message you. Yeah. I won't make it public because I don't want to spoil it for anyone.
Yeah. Don't spoil it. Okay.
All right. Brilliant. So Easter eggs really is is part of the answer to that. Come for the delightful tropes that are then twisted, and keep an eye out for the Easter eggs. Yeah. Okay. Recommend 3 fantasy books that you don't think get enough hype. They could be trad, they could be indie, doesn't matter, whatever you like, but 3 books that you like, love, but don't get enough hype.
Okay. John Horner Jacobs is a fantasy and horror writer. He's written some amazing things. His most recent book, A Lush and Seething Hell, is like a cosmic horror. Two novellas together. Amazing, creepy, disturbing things that you'll read, and then a few days later you'll be like, oh God. And you just start twisting around. But he did a really, really great fantasy trilogy. The first book is the Incorruptables.
Okay.
It's like a fantasy western, but with demonology and fantasy races that he's remade into something that's completely original. So there are dwarves and there are elves, but they're not like any elves that you've ever seen before, and they're really cool. And there's like steamboats and gunslingers.
Nice.
And there's not magic, but there's things around the edges, and they're amazing. So he's done that trilogy. I read that and just thought, absolutely fantastic. Love them. Really. The other thing, I guess, with reading fantasy is, and we said we read so much of it.
Yeah.
There's some things I'd never come up with, but there's some things I read and I just think, this is so different. I'm not seeing anything else like this, because you read certain books and they're similar-ish, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But you read something else and it's so different. You're like, wow, I've not read anything like this.
Yeah.
In a couple of years, 5 years maybe, since the last time I saw something like that. And his books were like that.
Nice.
Ed McDonald, he's done a great trilogy for Gollancz. I've got the second book, Raven Cry there. The first one I think is Crow. Oh no, Darkwing. Darkwing's the first one. Okay. It is fantasy. It feels like a post-apocalyptic-ish book, but it is fantasy. And there are unholy, weird, creepy races around the edge involved in the books. There are things that might be gods, might not. There's some weird technology. There's things that we don't understand that might be science. And it's pretty grim and brutal, but it's really got a lot of heart, and it's incredibly kind of creative, and just stuff that there again I've never seen in a fantasy book before, and thought, wow, this is kind of something quite special and quite unique. So I can't wait to get into the second book. Yeah, really, really, really cool. Who else? Does it have to be could it be sci-fi?
Sure, sci-fi. Yeah, anything SFF is fine.
Yeah.
The original question was fantasy, but you know.
Yeah. So another author that I don't think gets enough praise is Jamie Sawyer. He writes science fiction, really kind of awesome action space marine type things with soldiers going on cool missions, and there's weird kind of aliens that are quite disturbing and scary, and there's wars and intergalactic stuff and politics, and there's a larger story going on that you get hints at, and it builds up. He's done 2 trilogies for Orbit as well, set in the same world, that are so much fun, just so much fun. He's really good at characters as well. None of his books are huge doorsteps, but he's really good at doing a lot with quite a little. He kind of a charcoal sketch of someone, you build the rest of it in your brain, and that works better for me than someone giving you, here's 12 pages about the person, or is it Dickens and his 8 pages about the smoke, or whatever it was?
Yeah.
Oh God, we get it. Please move on.
Or the dinner settings, or the what? Yeah.
You know, so I like sometimes less is more. So Jamie Sawyer, Ed McDonald, and John Horner Jacobs. There's 3 people who deserve a lot more attention for their work.
Lovely. All right. I'll try to we'll try to write those down and put the links in a comment afterwards. And let's see, I'm gonna check to see.
Any more?
We still have people watching, but folks, if you have any more questions, throw them in. We got lots of time. Well, we have some time for more questions from the audience. But I do still have some more questions myself. So, okay, really, do you love how I'm just like switching back and forth, or like talking about your book, talking about things that have nothing to do with your book. But going back to The Coward for a bit, and I always am interested in fantasy religions, because there's so much one can do with them. There's a lot that doesn't get done with them in a lot of books, but I feel like I'm less than halfway through The Coward, but I feel like there's some things that are going to be done with fantasy religion in The Coward. But don't want to talk, like, again, no spoilers. But I do think we can safely talk about just the inspiration behind the shepherd and the I don't even know what the name of the religion itself is. What is it?
It's just referred to as the book and the faith, and the
book and the faith. Okay, right. So it's sort of like it's the one monotheistic one. Yeah. Okay. So and I see some very interesting things, and I'm always. This is a thing. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I like picking apart. There are multiple influences. I would guess. It seems to me there are multiple influences on this particular monotheistic religion, and the things that are being done in its name. The tenets itself. Do you want? Let's talk about. Like, I have lots of guesses, and I'm happy to guess people. And of course, I don't ever like to do the thing where it's like, well, the author said this, and therefore, no one else's interpretation is valid. But I do like to ask, like, when you sat down to write it, what things were you drawing on?
So some people have wrongly assumed that it's purely based on Christianity. They think I'm just poking fun at that, and I'm just having a go at that. Not true. Not true, I'm afraid. Sorry, that's not true. It's not a spoiler to say that in the front of every chapter of the book, there's either a quote from something or there's a small segment from the book.
Yeah.
And it talks about some of the pillars of the faith. And there are 5 pillars in another very popular faith that are core of their religion. But there's also things that are based upon Greek and Roman mythology in there, because it's not a spoiler. As part of the faith in the book, they believe that the shepherd himself was in the 5 kingdoms, working alongside the people, teaching them all the basics and this, that, and the other. And that goes back to the Greek mythology of, Prometheus bringing fire to the man, wandering around and being amongst the people. So there's that kind of influence as well. And then you start thinking about the idea of, if someone had, if this had been real, and if there'd been a god wandering around 500 years ago teaching people how to take iron out the earth to make it into, to steel, and make weapons, to make plows, and all this kind of stuff. And then 500 years goes by. Are people going to still think that it was actually a god? Or are they just going to think, oh, well, it was someone from a different land who we didn't really know, we didn't really understand, but because they knew so much, we thought they were gods. And like, what's that quote by any sufficiently advanced
technology is as good as magic, or whatever.
Yes, by Arthur C. Clarke, isn't it? Arthur C. Clarke?
No idea. I'm so terrible at remembering.
Someone correct me, please, in the comments.
It is if anyone knows who said that, chime in, please.
Because Arthur C. Clarke, someone correct me. So there's that other thing as well. Like, if someone knows so much and they appear to be so wise and all-knowing, and they're different and they come from a foreign place, you're like, is this person some kind of god?
Right. Yeah.
You think about all the silly time travel films where people turn up with something from the future and they go into the past, and they're just like, how can you do? If I went back to the 1980s and I took my phone and I showed them what I could do, they wouldn't think I was a wizard. They'd think I was, Bill Gates times 100. Like, my brain was I was some kind of superhuman. But if you accelerate that on and just sort of think that if you went back to 500 AD and you took something that was quite advanced and you could use it in that period and teach other people how to use it, who wouldn't think you were a god? Why? Superstition and religion and faith and all these kind of things have been around for so long, and there's hints in the world that there are other religions, but the person who's controlling the church is trying to suppress them for various reasons, because in her mind the one true faith is the best one. It'll bring people closer together. It'll help them.
She talks about the greater good a lot, as many religious authorities do.
And there's the other thing of, if the principles are sound and the book is sound, where's the taint? Is it with the people? Is it with the organization? I don't want to mention Christianity again, but there are so many splinters and factions, and you go back to original teachings that are all fantastic. Love thy neighbor, treat anybody else like you want to be treated. That you can't get that wrong. You can't get it wrong. And yet, there are so many. Well, I want to believe in this bit. This is the bit. The rest of it, that's not. And you're like, oh, okay. So there's a bit of that kind of thing as well. Like, where is the rot? Is it with the people? Is it with the church? What are the original core principles? And all the pillars in the book, most of them are mentioned. There's like 12 pillars, most of them, and they're all pretty sound. They're all very reasonable. Compassion, help people, do this kind of thing. Why wouldn't you?
Right.
So
very compelling.
drawing from lots of different areas. There again, anytime in my book you think it's one thing, there's a bunch of other things behind it. So take nothing on the surface. What you think.
Well, and this is the thing. So I have been just sort of giggling to myself as I've picked out all the different potential influences. And I honestly even went saw influences of a couple other things that maybe weren't even there when you were writing it, but just because of the asceticism and stuff, there are a few other religions that could also be pulled in. Anyway, it's so it's for me, I've been sitting there going, oh well, this is interesting, but I never I didn't look at that and think it was just the one religion that was being poked fun at. I thought that was pretty obvious right from the start.
You would think so, and yet
it's funny. And actually, the very first thing, because I saw the 12 pillars and I was like, oh gosh, are we what is, but then the more I read, I was like, okay, this is bringing in multiple religions to critique or to at least explore, and I feel like this is the theme of the book is all about subtext. I don't know. I mean, it's just context and intention and stuff, and so it makes it's not I don't know. My impression so far is that it's not a criticism of any one thing. Absolutely it's a let's question these things, and here's some parallels that we might want to think about critically. Anyway, that's
so in my other books. It's not a spoiler. One of the kind of themes in the later books is to do with magic and the fact that you're either born with it or not. It's not through bloodlines. It's kind of very randomized.
Random. Okay.
and it's just who you are. It's just how you are and how you're born.
Mhm.
Some a reviewer who and it was all to do with, if you don't ask, you don't have to tell people, because some people are ashamed of it, and some people don't like magic and they don't want to talk about it because they think they're dangerous and those kind of things. Somebody said, oh, he's obviously referring to the fact of, in the American Armed Forces, don't ask, don't tell was the thing to do with if you were gay in the armed forces, you didn't talk about it. And I was like, I was aware of that, but that isn't what I was actually referring to. That was that's that person's lens. They've come to the book and said, this is what he's doing, this is what he's saying. I was more kind of exploring the idea of, you're born other in any other way, pick whatever you want. Or you're you're raised in a particular faith, and then that's your family's faith, that becomes your faith, and that's how people interpret you, and you embrace it or not. And, it's that thing. But that person came and said, oh, that's what he's talking about. I'm like, well, I wasn't, but that's okay. That's what you saw. That's fine, So there's people interpret things.
You cannot account for any reader's lens, right? Like, that's just, people come to the book with what they come to the book with, and then there's nothing you can do about it. Once it's out, it's just out, and they're
out of my hands now. I can't go back and change things.
Right. Well,
commas, back to commas again.
Yeah, back to commas. Yeah, exactly. but even if you could, there's just no way to account for all the ways that people will interpret the work, right? So, anyway,
they can ask me questions and I can answer them directly and tell them, it's A or B or neither or all of the above. But it's better to ask than assume, I would say.
Sure. And there's also a degree to which it doesn't really matter what your intention was. It's like their experience reading it is still their experience reading it, regardless of what you meant. And there's, and that's beautiful and also sometimes horrible. Like there's,
you can't control it.
Yeah, you can't control it. And there's just, so what are you going to do? But I love, I don't know. It's magical when someone gets out of it exactly what you were hoping for. And sometimes it's magical when someone gets more out of it than you were hoping for. And you're like, wow, you took it to a whole new,
did you mean to do this? Yes, let's say I did. Absolutely. Yes.
But and then there's when people take your meaning the entirely wrong way, and you just want to be like, no, that's not.
That's the hard one. That's the hard bit. But I like it when they scratch beneath the surface and see some of what's going on underneath. Those are the I like that.
Yeah, it's always nice.
Yeah. It's rewarding.
Let's see. Gosh, I haven't gotten. Oh wait, why is it showing me top chat? I want to see live. Show me everything. Okay, still same. We don't have any new questions. So I've got one more question that I ask everyone who's on the show.
Okay.
But you know what? Before we do that, though, I have a very specific question for you, which we briefly discussed on Twitter. But any theories as to why many people think you sound like Neil Gaiman? Because we've established it's not because where you're from, right? Like, it's not regional.
No. We're from very different. I think it's the English thing. My accent is fairly neutral, my actual speaking voice, but my native, the area that I'm from, when I'm very tired or very drunk, my accent comes out and it sounds very, very different.
Right. But it's not just an English thing, though, because I talk to tons of English people.
Yeah.
And they do not sound like Neil Gaiman. And you, honestly, if I close my eyes and listen to you and I listen to Neil Gaiman, I'd be able to tell the two of you apart. However, there are moments when you sound just like him, and I think it's an inflection thing. There's a lot of statements he makes that sound a little bit like questions. And
that's a very Australian thing. They go up at the end where everything they say, even if they're not asking a question, it kind of goes there.
Yeah.
Like, what? Is that a question or not?
But it's
the pattern of his speech as well. I don't have the same pattern because he gets halfway through a sentence and he stops at certain points and then carries on, which I don't have.
No, you don't have that. But there are little pieces to it that you did for some reason, and it's just like your voice and his voice sound similar. Just a quirk of vocal cords. How tall is Neil Gaiman? Is it a height thing?
No, he's one of the little people.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is, but it's just funny. And I've like, as we've been talking, I've been trying to pick out moments, but I didn't want to like stop you and be like, okay, just there, you sounded just like Neil Gaiman.
Just like Neil there.
Just like that, just right there, yeah. But it's absolutely not. It's not just a British thing. It's because I'm familiar with a lot of very different British accents, but there's just something about the inflection, and you're just and just the sound of your voice. I don't know. Anyway,
well, if you want to hear what my actual accent sounds
what
like,
is it? Let's hear it.
I have to be very tired or very drunk to do it.
You
But
can't do it
I'm
on
actually a Geordie, so I'm from the northeast.
Yeah.
So that's a very different accent to my current one, which is quite neutral.
Yeah.
No.
And you can't make it come out on purpose.
Not really.
If you call home, can you do it?
Yeah, sometimes.
Well, I guess we won't ask you to call your parents. It sounds like you need to answer the door.
Yeah, I do. Hang on.
Okay, run. It's fine. I'll entertain people. So while Stephen's doing that, everyone should take a look at the description to this YouTube video. Includes a link to buy your very own copy of The Coward. So please do that. It's an excellent book. I'm enjoying it thoroughly. It is full of all kinds of delightful twists to a lot of more standard fantasy fare. And I really think that people will enjoy it. I'm enjoying it thoroughly. I can't wait to dig back in and read the rest of it. So there's a link to the Coward on Amazon and also on bookshop.org. So go check it out, buy it from your local indie or buy it on Amazon. Also, you can find the link to Stephen's website, and you can check out all of his other books there. And please do. And I believe you can also find, I've just been telling everyone about links, which are in the description. And also you can find Stephen on Twitter at, I believe it's at Stephen_Aryan, right? Is that...
Twitter's at Steve Aryan.
Yeah.
Facebook is Stephen Aryan _ or Stephen Aryan writer. I'm on Instagram. You'll find me as well. That's my neighbor delivering me some biscuits. That was nice of her.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, very nice.
Kind.
I enjoy them. I don't know. I just kind of glanced at it. I was like, thank you, bye. Get out.
Busy,
go.
So anyway, I basically just like took care of a thing that I would have done at the end anyway. So
cool.
So great. Now everyone knows where all the links are. But okay, now we can get back to our very final and very important question, which is, if you could have any fantasy animal companion, which would you choose and why? Digging deep here.
Probably Battle Cat, I think.
Ooh, like rideable?
Yeah, Battle Cat from He-Man.
Ooh.
You know, that Battle Cat. Because people just assume he's just a kind of very quiet little moggy, and then say the magic word or something and turn him into a giant puma with a harness. And you could ride him into battle. That'd be awesome.
Good choice. And may I commend you? I believe you are the first person to not say dragon.
Oh, okay.
So bravo, because, you know.
Thank you. Everyone goes to dragon.
Yeah, I mean, dragon's great, but
yeah.
I love dragons, right? So I get it. I understand, but I love the more Battle Cat. Yes, come on.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and combines cat with battle. But fantasy with awesome feline. Okay. Yeah, we have one more. A comment from Caroline Lamb, who says, I'm laughing.
Hi, Caroline.
As soon as my husband heard you speaking tonight, Steve, he said, he's famous, isn't he? Or else he sounds like someone famous.
Damn you. Tell him no. Tell him he's wrong.
He's wrong. It's not Neil
I don't
Gaiman.
sound like Neil Gaiman.
No. Actually, come to that. Do you do your own audiobooks, or do you have someone else?
No. I have spoken to all my audio narrators who've done them, just for pronunciation and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So the one who does the books, who did The Coward, is actually local, so it lives in the same city. Which I didn't realize. So once the kind of things cleared up, we're going to go out for a beer and have a chat. So that'd be good. Yeah,
fun.
Go meet up with them. So
yay,
that'd be fun.
Very cool indeed. Well, because Neil does all his own audiobooks, so obviously there's a market there for people to listen to your voice. Or you could start doing Neil's audiobooks.
Absolutely. Another line of work. I look together with teaching people how to market.
Diversify revenue streams.
Yeah, revenue streams. Yeah, this is it. Yeah.
Never. Okay. I was going to make jokes about you just hiring yourself out to pretend to be Neil Gaiman for other people's audiobooks. And
Happy to do it. Yeah. Pays good rage. I'll do it.
All right. Well, that is what are we nearly at the 2-hour mark? We're at 1:48. That's lovely. Perfect timing.
Cool.
And so anyone, I'm sorry, I've asked for questions multiple times. If you missed out, I'm sorry, but please get in touch via Twitter or Stephen's website or Facebook, any other ways. There's lots of ways to ask him questions. Also, he's got his own YouTube channel in which he talks a lot about writing. So if you ever want, and I did actually sort of avoid a lot of the writing technique questions because of that, because you've got a whole horde of videos that people can watch in which you talk about how to write books. So if you ever want to ask Stephen about that, please check out his YouTube, subscribe to it, and ask him questions over there. Or pop any of your questions here later. And if Stephen doesn't come back to check them, I can always pass them along via Twitter and he can answer that way. So if you're watching this after the fact, you can still ask questions, pop them in the comments, and I'll be sure to make sure Stephen sees them. And then, hopefully, if he's got time, he'll write back.
I'll answer,
So that's, I think, it from us. Thank you so much, Stephen, for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been great.
Delightful conversation. I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yes.
When the second book of this duology comes out, maybe, if you feel like.
It'll be next year. Yeah, I think it's going to be next June as well. So June 2022. Are we up to 22 now?
Yeah. There's like
a whole year's just kind of
gone.
Yeah, 2020 was a wipeout. So
totally, yeah, didn't count.
Nah. June 2022, book 2.
Brilliant. All right. So everyone, again, remember in the descriptions are the links. Buy the book. The Amazon link is there. The bookshop.org link is there. Get yourself a copy. It's delightful. I'm really enjoying it. And I assume you will too. If you're a discerning reader. No. If you've got taste, you'll like this book.
You'll learn to like it. That's right.
No, but really fun. And anyway, so that's it from us. QuaranCon business, folks. If you are a QuaranCon fan and we want more of our content, on June 27th, I believe, we've got Sarah Chorn coming to talk to us, which will be delightful. Editor and author Sarah Chorn talking about her new upcoming release, Glass Rhapsody. And then in late July, almost 1 month later, we've got Justin Lee Anderson joining us. And I don't even remember the date because I just booked that. So keep your eye out for those and join us. And don't forget to like and subscribe.